The Garden Report is powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Hey, Billy Manning here. Welcome to the Garden Report live from Miami. Josue Pavon's here, as well as Noa Dalzell. We all made it down for the switching of the sides in the series, and you can never tell which way it's going to go in these series until it flips sides. And the Celtics reasserted themselves tonight, 104-84, with a bounce-back effort from Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis good in this one as well, and the defense sharp after giving up all those threes in Game 2. What was the biggest difference you noticed in this one, Josue?
The intensity. I thought defensively the Celtics just really set the tone in that regard. Physicality. You know, I think both teams really didn't get out to a really hot start offensively, but I thought that what the Celtics were doing really helped them on the offensive end, if that makes sense, right? Those defensive stops, stringing them together. I thought Kristaps Porzingis was great. What was it, 3 shots? He was 3 for 3 to start with a couple of three-pointers. You know, got out to 8 points in like 5 minutes, which was obviously more than we saw in Game 2. But I just setting the tone and just reasserting himself, I thought was big, because that's a huge, like, Celtics are a different team when he's involved the way he was in Game 3 compared to Game 2. And then, you know, just that same approach on defense, I felt like remained, and especially when going into halftime with that big lead, I just thought that the Miami Heat, they really put them on the spot in the sense of trying to respond. They just couldn't, you know, especially getting out and holding that double-digit lead the way they did, the Celtics did throughout.
I think Heat only finished at 28 threes, inefficient night from them from deep. Celtics across the board seemed to say it wasn't about any adjustments or scheme or anything they changed from a coaching perspective, but rather just a renewed effort on that end, the attention to detail, the sharpness on that side of the ball. What did you notice there in terms of the three-point battle in this game?
Yeah, I thought that Joe said it best. It wasn't any particular adjustment that they made, but it was just all the small details and doing everything better. And you could see that, like, he called out Jrue Holiday as somebody that really set the tone defensively. Also called out by name Jason Tatum, Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis. All 4 of those guys, I think I just individually saw a big difference between Game 2 and Game 3. And I think it's easy to say, what schemes are we implementing as a team? Like, what are we doing differently? But a lot of times it just comes down to individual guys being a little bit more refined in their details, playing a little bit harder, being a little bit more physical. Eric Spoelstra said after the game they were the more physical team. Game 2, the Celtics were the less physical team, right? So it's going to come down to those small things. And I think, you know, the fans, the media, we love to be able to say, you know, this is like a chess match, this is a lot more complicated than that. I think what we saw tonight were guys just not, you know, closing out harder, just playing more intensely from the jump and really holding them in intensity throughout the game.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting too is that they won this game on defense. And Joe talked a lot about renewing their offensive focus, executing more efficiently on that side of the ball going into this game to be able to set up their defense. But it looked like the players took it on themselves to make this a defensive effort. Tatum was great on that end. Holiday, as you mentioned. Porzingis, I thought, pretty good too. They finished their possessions, got the rebounds, moved in transition, forced 12 turnovers, and won the turnovers, points off turnover battle, 24-4. So they're pretty disruptive in this one too. And it just had me thinking, like, this team, to me, as good as they are offensively, they can lean into defense and make that something that's there for them every night. And I think that's actually going to be the key to finishing out this series in 5, is bringing that defense every night. Because they weren't great offensively in this one. Jaylen started 0-4. They got into some of the mismatch hunting, got stagnant early. I think they only had like 20 points or so in that first. Held the Heat to 12 and had a good advantage early and often. So I feel like defense is the way to go here for the rest of the series, maybe in the rest of this run.
Yeah, I know, for sure. I mean, they're such a hard team to beat when everyone is dialed in like that defensively, you know. And I think a lot of the problems from Game 2 stemmed with, obviously, the Miami Heat getting off to a quick start, obviously knocking down so many three-pointers that created that lead or that advantage. But I just think at the end of the day, the Celtics mentally, they didn't give up any, you know, they took every possession very seriously, you know, and I just think they're so hard to beat when they're like that. And whereas in Game 2, we didn't always see that. I just felt like, again, I mean, we talked about it before, like, they just thought the shots would stop. They thought that the Heat have to cool off at some point. Let's keep exploring these matchups or whatever, and it didn't, you know, it didn't work that way. And I think the Miami Heat are that type of team where if the shots aren't falling and you're creating constant stops and you're disrupting their offensive rhythm, like, it's really hard for them to climb back, you know? I mean, how Bam Adebayo made such a big deal about Game 1 and how the Celtics got to a huge start and making all those threes, because I think he feels it. He knows. He's like, man, when we get off to a bad start, and if it doesn't change soon, or at least by halftime or so, like it's really hard to come back from that, especially when you don't have Jimmy, you don't have Terry Rozier, you don't have guys who can really pick up that slack, you know. And Tyler Hero had a heck of a game in Game 2, but I mean, if he's not going offensively as well, it's just that much harder when it's essentially Bam being the consistent threat on offense and no one else is able to get involved. And I think a lot of that happens when they're being defended, when they're uncomfortable, and the Celtics are just continually don't stop that. You know, like they don't look up and say, oh, we're up by 25. We can relax a little bit. No, we didn't see that at all. And you saw the end result of that, a 20-point victory.
Yeah, real heat, real intensity, real pressure on the offense. And the Heat lost another ball handler in this game too with DeLon Wright sitting, so there was an opportunity to force them into mistakes and put extra pressure on those guards. They even threw out a press at one point in this game, so that was refreshing to see. And you know, they weren't winning many of these games last year, Noah, where they shoot 29% from three. I think the number was 19 and 20 in those games last year when they fell below the league average from three. So last year's team probably loses this game. This year's team, I just think a much greater focus on defense. And I know Joe's usually focused on the offense, but it felt like the players came into this game and said, we're going to win this on defense.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point. The three-point shooting was not there tonight. So to be able to see them blowing out a team from really the jump the rest of the game and not ever hit that hot streak where they're just missing, you know, making everything, that was super encouraging, because those are the types of games you want to win in the playoffs, not just when you have a hot shooting game like in Game 1. And I think really the Celtics team, like, yes, you know, most of their top 8 are above average shooters, above league average shooters. I think Jaylen Brown's the one player in the top 8 that's not. But even so, what really stands out about the personnel to me is their ability to defend. You know, you have Drew Holiday, you have Derek White, you have Jaylen Brown, you have 3 guys that were, you know, had all defense cases this year. Porzingis had some of the best rim protection numbers in the league. Tatum, we know, is a very capable defender. And then the bench just really stepped up. So there's no reason for them to not be a really good defensive team during this playoff run. I think if they're not, it's more mental than they don't have the pieces. Like we've talked about, like, what would Brad even do this summer if this team had a first round exit? Like, you have everything you need on this roster. And tonight I think we saw that all come together really well.
It looks like if they can play at that level, they have the potential to close out this series in 5, especially if the shooting does join this defensive effort here. But an incredible one across the board in this game. They needed a night like this, and they got it, winning by 20, leading by almost 30 in the second half of this game, and putting it away early to make it a smooth Game 3 victory. 104-84, Celtics lead 2-1 in the series. They're back at it just 2 nights later, which Joe Mazzulla was relieved to hear. Monday, we'll have a time for you soon on that game, but for now, Josue Pavon, Noa Dalzell by my side here. Check out their work and check out more content from our coverage down here in Miami on Celtics All Access and all the player reaction tonight on CLNS Media. I'm Bobby Manning. This has been the Garden Report. We'll see you next availability or whenever we see you. Peace. Hey, Bobby Manning here. If you made it this far, you probably enjoyed this video, so subscribe, turn on notifications, and check out our social media platforms at Celtics CLNS.